Hello everyone, welcome to our third day in English in this first International Congress, More Human, Rehumanizing Humanity. I am Jessica Lockhart. I am the director of the International Institute of Humanology that is organizing this event. And I have to first thank our collaborators because you can see them here. They are the ones who helped us disseminate, organize, and now present this Congress to the world. I would like to therefore thank the Global Coaching Federation, the World Federation for Mental Health, 𝗖𝗎𝗥, and Ladies of All Nations International, or rather now Leaders of All Nations International, for their support and for helping us get the word out so we can all start rehumanizing humanity a little bit more. So what is this rehumanizing humanity all about? Well, these last centuries, humanity has undergone several revolutions. We have changed the way in which we live. And some of those revolutions, from the agricultural one to the industrial one to the technological one, always focused on what was happening outside of us. And humanity progressed, but we're at a point now, the world and humanity are at a point now where, at least at the Institute of Humanology, we think that it's about time we start looking inside instead of so much outside. We think that the next revolution that human beings need to undertake is a human revolution. We need to go back to basics. We need to go back to the human being because, after all, we are at the core of everything we do. Even when we're studying biology, we're doing it for us. So everything has to do with human beings. That's why we think it's so important to rehumanize humanity and go back to basics. Every day, we have been approaching a human topic. And today we're approaching one that, given the situation of the world, I think is really fundamental. The world, after internet and with the invention of different modes of transportation, shrunk and became a smaller place, better connected. It's easier to go from place to place. And not only that, we are witnessing tremendous moves, population moves around the world. A lot of people are moving because of conflict. A lot of people are moving because they want to improve their living conditions. A lot of people are moving because of work. There's the digital nomads, for example, the expats. And this whole movement of people is creating unique situations that we wanted to mention in this Congress. That's why today I'm going to be the proud conductor of a Congress devoted to the best practices to integrate oneself in a foreign country. Let me quickly say that I've had the opportunity, the pleasure, and the fun of living in 8 different countries already. I can't even start counting the cities, and I learned so much from all of them. Originally American, I was born in the US. I grew up in Spain. I lived in those 8 countries, and now, funnily enough, I'm back in Spain. But this is not about me. This is about the wonderful experts that are joining us today and that are going to share their own ideas, their wisdom, and their knowledge with you all. Before we start, let me remind everybody who's connecting already live with us that they can participate in the Congress directly by typing in their questions and comments. We want everybody to express their opinions and to ask their questions. And now, without further ado, let me introduce our first panelist for today. And the first panelist I want to introduce today is somebody who is living in Switzerland, where I was living last before I came to Spain. Her name is Dulcineia Santos. She is a human development facilitator, creator of the program Second Wind, aimed at people that wish to renew life impulses by looking to their own life story. She's a certified practitioner of the MBTI, a tool for assessing psychological types. She's the author of the book A Namorada de Dom, in which she talks about the lessons she learned from her relationships. So Dulcineia, it is an honor and a great pleasure to have you connect with us all the way from Portugal today to give us your time and your knowledge. The next 5 minutes are yours. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here and to be talking about a subject that's so dear to me and about something we need so much like this. So I will start saying that I think one of the main problems we have as immigrants is that we have to rediscover who we are in this new environment. And here I would like to address especially those women that, like me, had their job in their country of origin, and maybe some status there, and now they followed their partner somewhere. And for some reason now they cannot do their jobs anymore, and they feel like they became somebody's wife. And we tend to get stuck in, I don't know how to do anything else. I have worked maybe as a lawyer or maybe as a teacher, or I have been a mother, a housewife for so many years, and this is the only thing I know how to do. And my formation at the university is language, so I like to take the words and dissect them a little bit. And integrate means make it whole again. So I think we can start from there. What part of you that you left behind and that you can pick from your past to make yourself whole again in this new country? So what we want to do with this question is to rediscover what we liked, how can we serve, and then starting using this as an intrinsic impulse to integrate, something that makes sense for the person that you are now, instead of just doing something like, oh, let me join a book club, this way I can meet new people. So what I would like to suggest here is that you do a lifeline and put every single thing you know how to do, or things that please you, your dreams. Myself as a counselor, I work with the 7-year cycles, and especially if you are above 42 like I am, we say that you need to know what your essential quality is. And then what from everything you learned so far defines who you are? What's your core? What's your essence? And use that to integrate. So let's say your essential quality is bringing people together. How can you integrate with that? You can, for example, create activities for elderly people in your community and use that to integrate not just yourself, but other people as well. Or maybe you left a dream behind, like singing or something like this. And then, okay, then makes sense that you join a choir, not just for the sake of integration, but because that will also fulfill you. So it will serve for both things. That's one way of integrating. And other thing I'm doing, and that is working wonders for me, is voluntary work. So that's good for so many reasons. One, you have a routine. So whether you are feeling good or not, you know that people are counting on you and you have to be there. And as immigrants, sometimes we have so many obstacles. We have the language, the culture, the codes for us that live in Switzerland. You don't know anybody, you miss your friends. So it's very important to have something that kicks you out of the house and makes you integrate. For example, I work with elderly people. I help them shop. I do that once a week. And afterwards, all the volunteers, they do that on the same day. Afterwards, we meet for a coffee. And I got again from that I wasn't expecting. I started making friends with other volunteers. With that, I learned a lot about Switzerland, life there, little hacks that I wouldn't know unless I were married to a Swiss person, which I'm not. My husband is English and know as much about Switzerland as I do. And because of most volunteers are also retired, they always invite me to do things together. So we go to the fairs in Switzerland, we go to Christmas markets, we lunch together, so the seasonal dishes and so. And I tell you what, I don't see people my age as fun and as with as much energy as retired people, especially the ones that just retired, because they are rediscovering life and they have so much to offer and they are so much fun to be around. So that's my take.
Thank you so much, Dulcineia. I love it. I love it because at the Institute, we work in the field of integration and migrants, expats, but we also work with those who are over 55. We have a special group for that. And what you said is really on target. Thank you so much, Dulcineia. I know we'll combine what you just said with what the other panelists are going to be sharing today, so that our followers who are already connecting live will have a complete view, a complete list of tips and ideas and best practices to integrate in a foreign country. The next person I'd like to invite to be on the screen tonight is somebody that the Institute has already worked with in several occasions. Harf Hasan Kujjah, I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly, studied dentistry in his original Syria, but he soon discovered his interests that took him to studying other fields, such as management and leadership or business. Harf has worked as a tutor, mentor, consultant, and trainer for many years, in which he collaborated with uncountable universities and academic institutions, NGOs, banks, governmental authorities, and institutions. He established and directed the first official training center for the Aleppo Chamber of Commerce and Industry, reporting to the European Commission Business Center. Since then, he also founded his own training center in cooperation with the Human Resources Academy in the UK, in Syria, before deciding to expand their services to the MENA region. Harf is collaborating with the Institute right now, as I'm sure he will briefly tell you, and that is why it is such a pleasure and such a happy honor to have him here with us talking about this very important topic. Harf, thank you for being here. Welcome.
Thank you, Jessica. It's always honorable to work with you and to have this precious conversation. Yeah, first of all, I would like to mention that for two reasons, I'm interested to talk about this. First, as an immigrant myself, or let's call it also expat, that's also possible. And I will share something about my own life in this regard. The other aspect actually is being a trainer. So I'm interested in transferring my knowledge towards others rather than just how to live personally and how to manage this situation of living in a new country. Next year, actually, I will complete something. Actually, it is funny, such statistics for me. I will complete half of my life out of my home country, and the other half is back there in Aleppo city, the oldest inhabited city on the earth. So I'm fine with that, of course. I'm happy with this because, you know, when you have deep roots somewhere, but still you have long branches, so you could flourish anywhere else. So that's a good combination, I believe. It's not about longing or homesickness. It's about what can we do when we move to another country. In this regard, I would like to mention that when Jessica and me and other colleagues discussed a while ago, how could we help people to integrate in their new home, whether they are willing to stay for a long time or forever or even shortly, what could happen? And actually, the first input I prepared and sent to Jessica was about the whole aspects, while she said, no, we don't need those parts that could be covered by government and such institutions who are specialized in helping newcomers. No, we need to focus on the people themselves. What are their roles actually? What could they do? That's why we call it, I lead my own integration. And here, as a trainer of intercultural communication, we really need to touch something achievable, practical, that people really need according to their, let's say, variable natures, of course, because people come from different countries, different backgrounds, and they have different careers and different, let's say, family members. So what could be applied in this context? So I'm working on my own model, actually, which is, I will just mention something just very short about it. Let's call it embracing and ignoring. We have a new home and we have our original. So I could ignore both or embrace both as an identity and culture. And I could ignore one of them and embrace the other. And in those four cases, actually, they are not all positive, unfortunately, because if I'm ignoring both of them, in this case, I'll be depressed and lost. If I only feel that I belong to the new home, I'll be just a pretender and ungrateful. And if I refuse to belong or to integrate with my new home, I'll be isolated and anxious. Only if I feel constancy and pride about both, in this case, I will be a balanced and effective person. That's why we should just look ahead rather than feeling sorry about what we lost, because we did lost, of course. As many people, they lose something from their health among time, and they lose some of their family members, whether by death or maybe our sons and daughters, they just leave because of their life circumstances. We lose a lot of friends because they travel away. So actually, loss is part of our life. And I know that, unfortunately, I know them personally, those people who could be depressed now, or they are, as also Jessica told me once, they are hiding in the future or in the past or in the present. So if someone is losing his or her identity, this is, let's say, losing the idea, losing or hiding in the present. Depression is hiding in the past. And those people who gave up and they are just waiting the end of their life, they are hiding in the future. We should focus how to overcome, and it is achievable. We could do it. I'm sure we could do, but I don't want to exceed my time. I did already. So maybe we will continue later in this session. Thank you.
Oh, we will continue for sure. I am completely sure, Harf. But yes, we want to give the floor now to another one of our panelists. We are now going to Africa. Yay, we're going to Angola. And I am extremely, extremely happy to introduce one of our sisters in Loani, if I'm not mistaken. It is with great honor and pleasure that I am happy to introduce Dr. Enolia Foti. She's a distinguished academic and corporate leader with over 2 decades of corporate experience. She's honed her skills in leadership and coaching. She's an award-winning speaker and writer who integrates her corporate acumen with a profound understanding of diverse global traditions. Recognized as an indigenous matriarch and grandmother elder, she channels an ancient wisdom to motivate and uplift individuals. She's also devoted to peace and an advocate of wellness, is the CEO of Enolia, a co-founder of 𝗖𝗍𝗏𝗏 Step Group and the Expressions of Humanity Foundation, distinguished wellness professional with decades of experience in energy medicine, holds a doctorate in international peace from the United Nations, in humanities from United Nations International Peace Organization, and serves as the Director of Operations for Vision Africa Development. Enolia, I am sure that you will somehow add to what our previous panelists already said, and I can't wait to hear you. These are your 5 minutes. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for that beautiful introduction, Jessica. I truly, truly appreciate it. And thank you for all of my peers that are here. So I want to talk to you because here I am. I'm from New York City, Bayside, Queens originally, and I'm sitting here in Angola speaking to you now. So integration is something that I'm actually living at this moment. So when living integration, the first thing that had to absolutely come into play in order to truly be heard and to be seen is to learn the language. Take the opportunity to learn the language. And if you don't know the language, then open your heart and allow yourself to be able to read the body language as well as the words that are being spoken. Submerge yourself in the language. Do not go to your original language, because there's something that takes place in the mind that at a certain point, after certain periods of times, an understanding comes. An understanding just comes. It's not a one-for-one, like I'm translating the words in my head. And so if you can embrace and open your heart to that, that is the first and foremost thing that I think is most important. The second thing, along with being important of learning the language, is understanding the culture. Take the time to understand what's important in the culture versus your own. So for example, here I am in Africa. Food is everything in Africa. To be invited for food, to be engaged, to have a meal is very essential. That is important as being introduced as a key leader in your area of expertise. Whereas in the culture that I come from, food is not. Food is sustenance. Food is just something we engage in to have a conversation. But if I turn it down, I'm not insulting someone. However, in other cultures, if you turn down food, you're insulted. You're sending a message that their food isn't good enough. You're sending a message and you may not even mean it, and you may not even know it. So to understand the importance of what's taking place in the culture, what's important to that culture that you're engaging in is of the utmost importance. The next thing I would say is building a relationship, because when you make effort to build a relationship, you join events, you engage in being afforded the opportunity to participate. And when you participate, you send a message of inclusiveness, that you respect and appreciate what's there. And then you in turn want to share what you are and what you bring to the table. So to me, that is one of the key pieces of cultivating a relationship, is understanding the culture, bringing in the language, even if you speak a few words, to build that relationship. I think that staying curious and open-minded is very important. Do not come to the table with a sense of entitlement of what people owe you, but meet them halfway to say, okay, this is new for me. But although it is new for me, I come with my heart open and my arms open to be able to embrace something new, to be able to engage in something new. And even though it may be new to me, I'm willing to learn. I'm willing to understand and learn what it is and why it is important. Other pieces are be patient, be flexible. Be patient, be flexible, be flexible. I cannot stress this more. It is not your culture. It is not the same. So therefore, if they move slower, it's not that they're moving slower. When I was in Italy, they take food to a different level. They enjoy food. They take hours to eat food. They don't rush through their food. So therefore, be patient. Enjoy, relax, slow down. The different culture that you're in isn't moving at the pace that you are. if you're moving fast. Understand that the rhythm of the location that you're in also plays a role. So I would say seek immersion, stay informed, get involved with the community, embrace the challenges that help you grow, and maintain the connections and the relationships that you've introduced into your life and that you've cultivated while in that foreign country. They may be your lifeline, and they may be a key help to something that you need. So with that, the last thing that I'll summarize is smile. Because the universal language that somebody will understand is that if you come with a smile, that even though everything may be falling apart, even though you're not sure and you're flustered, if you know and you come with a smile, the patients will be on the other side that's receiving you, and they will help. I'm living it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Enolia. I can but comment that being a former simultaneous interpreter, the translation in congresses and events really didn't have anything to do with words, but with concepts. And being a good interpreter meant that you fully understood the two cultures you were translating to and from. And to be a good interpreter, you had to be able to take the meaning and convey it into meaning, not a word, and turn it into a word, because sometimes words don't exist in both languages, for example. I would also like to make a little comment. I agree with you, I'm a smiler, I'm always smiling. But when we moved to Russia, smiles were frowned upon. We were told that, you know, they don't like it when you smile for no reason. They find it dumb. They need a reason to smile, and we were told to stop smiling so much, just as an anecdote, and to see that we need to understand the culture we're in. Thank you, Enolia. That was really, really enlightening. I'm going to introduce the next speaker. I'm really happy to meet with her again. After so long, we met in Switzerland a while ago. It was a wonderful encounter, and I am really happy to have her as a guest in today's Congress. She is currently living in Switzerland, although I think she is also moving quite a lot these last years. Liliana Tinoco is a journalist and an author on the subject of migration. She has a master's degree in intercultural communication from the University of Italy in Switzerland and specializations in cross-cultural communication and peace building. She currently works as a migration specialist for the Integration Office of the Canton of Aargau in Switzerland. In 2020, she launched a book on Brazilian marriages with foreigners and has just finished her second book, this time on xenophobia and Brazilian migrants. Born in Rio de Janeiro, she's lived in Switzerland since 2005 with her German husband and their 2 children. Liliana, welcome again to the Institute of Humanology. So happy to see you and to hear you. These are your 5 minutes.
Thank you. Jessica, I don't know if you noticed, but I'm blushing.
And why, if I may ask?
And now it became worse.
Okay, don't worry, you're among friends. I can guarantee that.
I don't know when you started talking about me. So I would like to say that I'm very, it's a pleasure to be here. And I totally agree with all the panelists, what they said. And I would like to start talking by mentioning why I entered so deeply in this subject of integration and migration. I think for me, leaving my city in 2005 to get married to a German, leaving everything behind was so difficult. And then I had my children, I was working with something else. And then in 2015, I decided to study, to do this master about intercultural communication, to understand where I am in this world. Really, it was a personal need to understand about migration, all these barriers, all these sometimes misunderstandings, all the problems that I face here in the German part of Switzerland, which is very hard. Jessica knows what I'm talking about. So, but hard in terms of people are very reserved and it's very really cold, and you don't find this smile back if you smile. So Dr. Enolia Foti, I am a person who is always smiling, but many times I don't get this feedback. And then I started studying. In 2016, I had to write my master thesis, and I decided to write about Brazilian women living in the German part of Switzerland. So I wanted to say that since then, I have been studying the Brazilian diaspora in the world, because I don't focus only on Switzerland, but in many countries. And then I wrote this book. I was a columnist for Swiss Info during 3 years, writing about integration. And then I decided to write about this second book, because the first one was launched in 2020, and I decided to write about this book. Actually, I wanted to write about the prejudice that Brazilian people bring when they go abroad, especially to the north part of the world, which makes such a difference. And then when I started interviewing people, I interviewed 60 persons, and I just discovered, I mean, it's ridiculous to say that, but it's the truth. I discovered that racism was the worst thing that we Brazilians bring when we go abroad. So it means, what I want to say is that we face xenophobia if you have a white skin, but you act racist against other Brazilians and other people. And these Black people face racism and xenophobia simultaneously, like intersectionality. Anyway, the book is not just about that, but it's a lot about our behavior as Brazilians, as a country with such racist background. And then I think integration for me is my life. I mean, migration, I deal with that every day. If I'm not here working where I'm working right now with integration, I work with 30 people from 19 different nationalities and lots of, I forgot the name in English because I work every day in German. The people who have to leave the country because of a war. I just forgot.
Refugees.
Yes,
refugees.
Refugees. I just forgot the word. I work with lots of refugees. And for me, it's just the core of my life at the moment, knowing, understanding, and trying to improve this integration for lots of different people and lots of different backgrounds. I think I spoke a lot. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Liliana. Okay, that also gives us the perspective of a specific group of people and the kind of problems or the kinds of situations they may be facing and how to deal with it when they want to integrate. And now I'm going to introduce the last of our panelists today. She's the last in the order, but not the last in importance, of course, not at all. I would like to ask her to join us on the screen. I know that she's going to contribute with another different perspective that will add to what we've already heard all the other previous speakers explaining. Mbeke Waseme, I hope I pronounce your name properly, earned her BA at the University of Sussex in Falmouth and furthered her education by completing her master's at Goldsmiths College, the University of London in New Cross. In addition to her academic achievements, Mbeke has made her mark as an international educator, having shared her expertise in diverse countries. She is a published author with 2 poetry collections to her name, showcasing her creative prowess. Her most recent publication, How to Live, Work and Thrive Abroad Successfully, serves as a valuable guide for those aspiring to navigate the challenges and opportunities of living and working in foreign lands. So as you can see, I am sure that Mbeke will have a lot to say about this topic. Mbeke, welcome to the Institute, to this first International Congress, More Human, Rehumanizing Humanity. These are your 5 minutes.
Thank you, Jessica. Thank you so much for inviting me to be part of this very unique combination of experiences and specialists. And so much of what has been said already links to what I had to say. And that's the great thing. There are connections between everything that we are talking about and have experienced. And when I think about relocation, one of the most important things that always comes up for me is the mindset. And Dr. Enolia, is that how you say your name? Yeah, thank you. Touched on it as well. If our mindset is about going and taking all the things that we have been raised with to the new place, then we put ourselves at a disadvantage because we're not present, we're not experiencing what we're exposed to. We're always comparing it to, oh, back home was so much better. Oh, back home, the systems were so much better. The transportation was better. The food was better. And actually what that does is it shuts the body, the mind, and the spirit down. And there is so much to gain from being in new places. Even where you are, Liliana, where it's cold, even in the cold places, there are things to learn. I'm not a cold person myself, but I know that there are always things to learn. You move to a new place, and if you're present, you learn so much from the culture around you. You learn so much from the people. You learn so much from observing the children. You learn so much from looking at the architecture, from looking up, from walking. I'm a walker, and wherever I go, I like to walk. I think cars serve a purpose, but actually when you walk, you meet people. And the strangers that you meet often become your friends. There is a camaraderie with people who sit on the sidewalk and observe others. You know, you walk into coffee shops, you walk into restaurants, people get to know you more than if you're in a car always dashing from A to B. So it's that mental state, that spiritual state about being open to learning, being open to consuming, being open to sharing, going into a new place with a spirit that says, okay, I'm here. And if you're there for employment, it may be a choice. Your company may have asked some people to go abroad. If you're there because you've chosen to relocate, then there is a choice. But it's about whatever the reason that's taking you to the new place, about being present, about looking at the food, tasting the food, you know, not always comparing it to food that you've known. Everybody has some basics in their diet and they season them in a different way. You can have potatoes in Germany that taste very different to potatoes in London, to potatoes in Ghana, to potatoes in Nigeria. My parents came from Jamaica and they migrated to the UK. And so they embraced and had to deal with many, many challenges. So I'm a child of people who left everything that they knew and moved to a very different space. And I think that's given me some of the resilience because I've worked in different places. I've worked in Dubai, I've worked in Ghana, I've worked in Nigeria, I've worked in Malaysia. And each one of those places has taught me so much. And, you know, Chimamanda Ngozi says that we go away to seek, but we come back and find ourselves. And I find that saying very interesting because sometimes you go to a place and you learn more about how English you are, or how American you are, or how Jamaican you are, or how German you are in that new place. And so sometimes it's about recognizing that you're learning about who you are, learning about the new place at the same time, and seeing where they marry, where they come together comfortably, so that as you go through that journey, however long you're there, you sit comfortably in the space. You sit comfortably in walking down the road in Malaysia, as you would walking down the road in Jamaica, as you would walking down the road in Nigeria or Ghana. Yeah, but you have to be comfortable with yourself. And so the mental and spiritual space that you are in, that you occupy, is what you take with you. So I'm going to stop there and say thank you.
Thank you so much, Mbeke, for this perspective. As our viewers can see, and once again, you can write your comments and your questions that we will transmit to our panelists. We have complementary information and points of view that are somehow combining to give us a clearer picture of what it is to try and integrate in a foreign country. The process of integration is sometimes different, though, depending on where you come from. It varies depending on your status. Are you a refugee? Are you a migrant? Are you an expat? Are you a digital nomad? That might also have an impact upon the way in which you integrate or not. But all this is something that we will be asking our panelists to discuss in the debate that is now going to happen here in our Congress. So I welcome everybody on stage again, this virtual stage. And remember that I have a few questions for you. If you want to answer any of the questions that I pose, raise your hand, virtual or real, or just open the mic and start talking. The first question that I have for you all is, what role does the integration of the rest of the family play in your own integration? You know, sometimes we move on our own, but oftentimes we move with our spouses or with our families. So what role do the rest of the family play in our own integration? Who would like to break the ice and go first? Go ahead, Mbeke.
The role of the family can be incredibly important. If you have small children that you have to consider, you might want to think about what kind of education, if you're putting them through a formal education, what kind of education do you want your child to have? There is the education of just being in the country, and children do this so much better than adults. They go out and they just start playing with other children, and many children learn the language very quickly because at that age, they're so much more open, particularly primary school children, that kind of 4 to 7, 8 years old. So if you're relocating, you have to consider what you will be doing with your children, what kind of school you may want them to go to. And if your relocation is a temporary space, does the education being offered allow you to seamlessly move back into the education system where you started from? So those are things that have to be considered. If you have a spouse, will that spouse be able to work as well? I've worked in places where one educator goes along, and depending on the visa you have, your spouse cannot work. In other countries, the spouse can work as well. And so if you are part of a couple, how does the other person feel if they cannot work? And they're in a new country, their partner is at work all day. How do they keep themselves busy? Do they have the confidence to go out and make new friends in a new place? So those are just some of the things that need to be considered when you're thinking about moving with a family.
Thank you, Mbeke. Anybody else would like to add something?
I'd like to just continue from Mbeke Waseme, beautiful. The other pieces of that I would think is like, what kind of support system is going to be there? You don't know what you don't know. And so those that are engaged around you really can help unveil some of the information that you need, how to find certain products, how to find certain locations, how to navigate just being there, you know, what cabs are safe, what aren't, what isn't, you know. So that support system is really, really important because, I mean, we do that on such a daily basis in our normal lives that we don't even think about the fact that, you know, our friends recommend to us, oh, try such and such person, or try such and such place, or try such and such doctor. Health services, you know, many times we're healthy, but lots of times there are family members that can get sick, are sick, and the support system in terms of health services and what's needed, medicines that you might be already on, and then you're transplanting into a new location. Can you get that medication in that particular country? What are the rules of engagement of getting those types of prescriptions? So on and so forth. So I would think that that's very, very important. And then another piece of this is just literally just that sense of belonging. Feeling like you belong somewhere, because it's very easy to be isolated and not know anyone. And then if you're not a person that is that easily makes friends, then, you know, what is it that you can engage in and participate in so that you can have a sense of belonging, so that the situation affords you the opportunity to be able to make friends. And I'll leave it at that.
Okay, thank you, Enolia. Harf?
Yes, I've been asked by training centers several times to deliver training courses for people who are traveling to a particular country. In my case, it is Dubai city, because I've lived there for 7 years. Just because those people who are willing to move there, they want to understand actually the culture, and that applies for any other countries. But I'm mentioning Dubai because it is my case. In all occasions, spouses were there attending the same course. And we should cover actually the interest of both, not only the person who's going to work there. Because, you know, that could even affect the decision of traveling or not, or accepting the offer or not. And then how to manage there. Because, you know, if your spouse is resisting being there and keep complaining, that will be, I think, a disaster in all means. So, and it could be right, of course. Resisting sometimes is understood, and it could lead even to change the whole idea. But of course, that's a key of balanced life.
Yeah, I was going to add that, and it's funny that you mention it, because as an expat's wife, I was first a migrant, then I became an expat's wife. I moved on my own too. I'm also a nomad in a sense. I recall always having to be the person in the family to first learn the foreign language. My husband was always working. He always worked in English, and he was not expected to even learn the language because he had no free time to learn the language. So I had to learn the language because we had to go to restaurants, because we had to go to schools, because somebody had to learn the language. So fortunately, I am a little gifted for languages and I learned them quite fast. But I recall having met a French lady who was in the same situation that I was. And the next appointment for her husband was offered, and she was so depressed. She was so upset. She was not willing to continue moving to other countries, to learn the language again, to be in charge of the family, and to let her husband do his job. She just could not take the pressure, and she was not interested in pursuing that kind of life. But I remember that, to me, it was a fantastic opportunity to get to know the cultures wherever I was, to get to meet people. But of course, that's part of who I am. I think that's also part of who all of us are. And we can't force it. We can't expect everybody to be like me. Not everybody's going to enjoy learning 15 languages and meeting people everywhere. And we have to know that of ourselves. Sometimes there's no choice. Sometimes you have to run away, or you have to move somewhere, and you have to learn the language. But then in those cases, we often see something that is related to what Mbeke said. Mbeke said, children learn the language faster because they're more open. And I say, yeah, but there's something else. Children are always in contact with the second or third or fourth language. They are in school or they are playing in that language. When adults go to another country, they attend language lessons, 1 hour a day, maybe 2 hours a day, but then they go home to cook and clean, or they go to work, and they're not in contact with the language so much, or as much as children are. And that is why it's so much harder for adults to learn the languages. But then something that can easily happen is what we saw in the famous My Big Fat Greek Wedding movie. You create ghettos. You have people who just interact with their own culture in the foreign country, or they just create a small sub-world with their own culture where they don't integrate at all because they're not comfortable. And their children, and this is where the question is related to what I'm saying, their children start acting as liaison between the country of origin or their family and the country where they're living. And that creates some very difficult situations family-wise. And I think that it's important that we consider this. If you're going to be in a country with your family, don't make your children become your translators, your teachers, your representatives. It is important to let them enjoy the new experience and to give yourself the chance to do that too. I just wanted to point that out. Mbeke asked for the floor. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, some amazing points, Jessica. Absolutely amazing points you're making there. And one that's jumping out at me is this thing about not about learning the language and not having your children be the bridge between you and the new country. In education, where I've worked in international education, nobody wants to speak to you in their language. They want to learn English. So there's this constant wanting to learn the new language and constantly being told, no, we want to learn English. We want you to speak in English. And so, you know, you have to make the time, you have to make a concerted effort to do that. Otherwise, you can be in a country like I was for 3 years and learn very little because everybody wants to hear your English. Everybody wants to learn your English. So, you know, that's an ongoing thing. And the other one about, he made another point. I have to write it down, it's gone. But yeah, some key points, thank you.
It'll come out for sure.
Yeah, it'll come.
Okay, if nobody else wants to add anything, I would like to ask the second question for our panel. The second question says, integration is not just speaking the local language. In your opinion, what are the most important fields in which a person should make an effort to integrate? Enolia mentioned a few, but I'm sure all the other panelists and Enolia too might have other ideas as well to add. Liliana, go ahead, please.
I would like to add something a little bit critical. What I have been facing here in Switzerland, a country which is very difficult to integrate with the natives. I'm not talking about the ghettos, making friends with other expats. I'm talking about integrating with the natives. I don't know if Dulcineia has the same opinion, but I think it's not just learning the language, which is German, very hard to learn. But it's not only that, because you learn the language and they speak with you in dialects on the street, and they don't like to speak the official language, the one that you learn at school. But not just that, they don't really want to make friends. I mean, it's in general, right? I'm not talking about everybody, but in general, they are not really very receptive for foreigners. And I'm not saying that based only on my personal experience, but also based on my interviews that I have been doing since 2015. And also, I don't remember the name of the study. It's published every year, and Switzerland has always the worst scores when it's about making friends. Well, saying that, I would like to maybe to spotlight that people, the natives, have to do also an effort to accept diversity. And yeah, I think that's a very important point, because integration is not always only A to B movement, but B to A. Thank you.
Thank you, Liliana. Yes, I agree. Let me just mention that I also lived 8 years in Switzerland. In my experience, there is a big difference between the German-speaking part of Switzerland and the other 3 parts, the Italian, the French, and the Romansh. And I met uncountable people because of my job as a humanologist. And a lot of the expats commented that after having had the expat experience all around the world, Switzerland to them was the hardest country to integrate. And I am saying this, although I did make Swiss friends. I'm one of the few. I'm very lucky. And I am very, very pleased to say that it is very hard, yes, but once you make a Swiss friend, you usually have a Swiss friend forever. But it is true that the Swiss themselves complain of that. The Swiss explain that if you haven't made friends in your childhood and you have to move somewhere else in Switzerland, it's really difficult to make new friends. So it's part of their culture. They are raised to really establish very strong bonds in childhood and in teenage years and keep those. But it's harder for them to make friends later in life. It is true. Mbeke?
Oh, I remembered my point. So let me just say, you used the word ghettos a few times, and I find that an interesting word. And my experience is that when people move to a new country, they tend to move to be around other people who share their background. So again, I refer to my parents. When my parents first came to England, they came from Jamaica and they lived in communities where lots of Jamaicans live. And that community was what allowed them to, for instance, buy their house, because they pulled their resources together. They had a monthly partner. Some communities call it susu, where everyone pays one person and one person gets the money each month, because the banks wouldn't give them loans. The banks didn't think they were worthy of getting bank loans. And so that community was what sustained them. They were around people who ate the same food, who understood their experience of being in the Caribbean, and they were then able to move out from that to buy their own home, but from that community input. So I think the ghetto, or that need for community can be really important when you move to a place where you know no one. And if it's not for work, so you don't have your work colleagues, actually you often start at a place of familiarity. And so you want to be around people who understand your experience until you're established and settled in that space. So that's the point I wanted to make.
Let me just clarify why I used the word ghetto. I used it willingly because sometimes people don't dare get out of there. They just remain there. And in that sense, it becomes a ghetto. Not when you use it to integrate in the country, which is not a ghetto then. It's just like a springboard.
Yes.
But when you just use it and stay inside, then it's closed. In that way is how I meant it. Thank you, Mbeke. Anybody else would like to add something? Okay. Yes, Harf. Oh, there you are. Go ahead.
Yeah, actually, I believe there are several aspects also to consider when you would like to integrate. It starts from the cultural barriers and also the language barriers, of course, and then participating in the new society. Do I want to participate or just be receiving or just be complaining about the differences? And even we could even use further words like thriving in the new country and fitting in. Of course, it starts with understanding the new home in terms of understanding that the host country, that geography, demography, laws, regulations, government, things like this. And then after trying to master the language, if needed, because in some countries you could use a third language, neither use and know theirs, and that's possible. Then we need some practical skills for daily life, of course, like transportation, housing, education, healthcare, financial, let's say, means, anything like that. And then I think one of the most important is the social and cultural integration, like understanding local customs and traditions, accessing social services, networking and community engagement, intercultural communication, of course, and mental health and well-being, which is I am emphasizing actually on this. So those aspects I think are really important to consider.
Thank you, Harf. The question says, what are the most important fields in which a person should make an effort to integrate? And I would like to mention here that there are certain fields in which a person can make an effort that will help that person integrate, things such as, for example, hobbies or interests. Sometimes, if you have an interest or hobby, pursuing it in your new country might help you integrate. Churches or religion can sometimes also act as a bridge, as a connection for that integration process. I think that social activities of any kind are important also for your integration. So engaging in, I don't know, going to wine tastings and meeting people there, I don't know, I'm just giving ideas out there, could also help people improve their chances at being integrated. So these are just a few of the aspects that I wanted to add to what Enolia said before. I think those are important as well. I have another question for you. How can friends help in our integration process? Okay, what's your experience? What do you think about friends helping us? Who wants to say? Yes, go ahead, Mbeke.
Friends can help by researching, doing a little bit of their own research about the new location. I know that where I've worked in places where it's been hot, sometimes friends think I'm on the beach all day. And then when they see me, they say, oh, you don't have a tan. I'm like, I've been at work in an air-conditioned office or in an air-conditioned school. So, you know, having a, doing a little research around what you're doing, something as simple as being mindful of time difference. Between the UK and Malaysia, there is a 8-hour difference. And, it's frustrating to tell people this every day. So you wake up to lots of missed calls, lots of messages, why you're not answering your phone. And when I lived in Malaysia, one of my sisters got it absolutely right. She would ring me in the morning before I left for work, because that's the time she was going to bed. And I would ring her when I came home from work, because that's the time she would be getting up. And these are small things, but actually keeping those links when you're in a new place and you first arrive and you're on your own are really important for your own mental health and well-being. And when people just forget where you are and just call you at a time that suits them, not taking on board that you're in a different time, makes a big difference. They're small things, but they make a big difference to just investing in your new location, your new experience, and continuing to consider the differences and you doing the same.
Thank you, Mbeke. Anybody else? Yes, go ahead, Dulcineia.
So I think it's a little tricky, has some sides to it. So one thing, and I think Liliana will agree with me, that this happens a lot among Brazilians, which is to stay just among them and then, like you said, becomes a ghetto and we don't do anything else. And you keep eating the same food and talking with the same people, speaking the same language. So in that sense, it would help. And then I had another example, the other side of the coin, which was meeting a person from Ecuador that was living in Switzerland for such a long time, and she didn't speak any English or any Portuguese. So I was obliged to speak French, and I had to learn it. And because she was like, I moved to a new place, and she was the first friend I made, and that really helped me to learn the language. Also, she was very strict with, like very disciplined. So you have to integrate, you have to learn this, you have to learn that, and that helped a lot. And I also want to talk about the friends we left behind. And I think they help us as well. There are the days that I want to give up from everything. And I say, no, I go back to Brazil. And they say, no, you don't want that. So you really don't want that. And so, and they are the people that, because as Liliana said, we were living in a cold place, cold in all the sense. And sometimes you just need people that the warm people that to say, look, everything will be okay. It's okay to cry. It's okay to feel bad. Let's just make beans and rice and eat and be happy for a while. Yeah. And so I think there are these sides.
Thank you, Dulcineia. I don't know if Enolia raised her hand. That was my impression. Yes. And then Enolia and then Liliana for sure. Go ahead.
And so I want to say how important friends really are because, you know, as I'm living this experience right now, it's the friends that help me be at the other end of the location that I needed to get to. And because I'm not fully speaking Portuguese yet, but I'm speaking enough that I can get around and make my way, but I can't speak in depth about where I'm going, how I'm going, just like that. And so friends being on the other end. So I've encountered both what Dulcineia has said, as well as Mbeke has stated, which is that friends who can give you insights and share and invite you to social gatherings and have a really, really good time. And then I remember my Brazilian friends here who invited me within their community, of staying within their community right here, you know, in Angola, and they go different places. And so the beauty about that is that you can really pick where you're most comfortable. Okay, so if you're more comfortable integrating into the whole complete of the country, then you know you're gonna work with one set of friends. But if you want to stay within a community and see the same people all the time, and you do everything as a group, and I've encountered that also. So there's a balance between what makes you feel good and what really allows you to just be the best person that's comfortable in that foreign country as you can be. And what you particularly choose. So, yeah.
Thank you, Enolia. Before I give the floor to Liliana, let me just point something out, okay? I had an Aunt Sally, who lived in Spain for 40 years and never ever learned Spanish. She was an English teacher working at an international school. She never learned a word of Spanish, but she had friends and she was happy. We're talking about integrating in the new culture. And not everybody wants to integrate, and that is okay. We're not judging here. We're not telling everybody to integrate because they have to. It's a personal choice. But if you want to integrate, everything that our experts are sharing today will help you do so. I just wanted to clarify that so nobody feels like we are criticizing anybody else, okay? Liliana, please, go ahead.
I wanted to add something that Dulcineia said about friends that are in our country, and sometimes you feel so lonely, you want to talk about someone with your culture. But besides doing all the things I explained I do, I also have, once per month, I realize some online coffees like this now. And we talk about, it's a project about getting old abroad. So it also goes, it's also interesting for you, Jessica, but we do it in Portuguese. Anyway, in all these encounters I have been doing since 2021, I hear a lot that Brazilian women complain that they feel more lonely when they talk about their problems with the friends that are in Brazil and they don't understand what they are talking about. I mean, you already feel lonely here or in any country where you are as a migrant because you have so many barriers to overcome, so many problems and things and this and that. And then when you explain what you are feeling to someone from your family or someone from your network, people say, but you are in Switzerland or you are in Italy, you are not here. And they don't take anything into consideration. And these people, they complain so much about that. You see, I think it's just another side of friendship that might change the dynamics while you are experiencing all these complex situations and people who you grew up with never experienced. And so I wanted to add this topic.
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Liliana. It's very important, and that's a valid point of view as well, of course. Anybody else would like to add anything about friends? Okay, so I have another question for you. Is it worth it for short-term expats to try and integrate as well? Why or why not? Go ahead, Dulcineia.
So I think it is, as you said yourself, Jessica, in the beginning, the world is becoming small. And the friends we do sometimes in a corner, and then we meet later, and they can become partners. They help you integrate. Sometimes you meet people abroad for a short space that they will help you in so many ways. I just had I met a person in Portugal while I was short staying, and you know, she was just taking pictures, and I invited her to sit with me and my husband, and we had a drink together. And so she was from US. She has this beautiful, it comes out she was a sitter, and she has this beautiful project called the Luxury Vagabond. And she's so, we met there, we stayed together for 1 hour, but she's so supportive of my work. She's always, you know, cheering for me. She's always commenting on my posts and saying, well done, girl. And this is so important for us as women, as foreigners, as human beings, as we are talking about humanizing, you know. And so I think it doesn't matter if it's for a short leave. I have another one that's actually a very nice way of meeting people. If you go out having lunch together and then you just talk with the person in the next table. I do this a lot. It doesn't work in Switzerland, but it works. It works wonders here in Portugal. In US, it worked as well. That I talk with the person next on the next table, and then we just build a friendship. I have a very good a person. We became very good friends. I visit her when I go to London, and so I talk with her. She's 70 something. I talk with her when I have problems. She talks with me. And I mean, I think the world is getting more and more with less boundaries. So it doesn't matter if it's a short stay, a long stay. I think it's worth to integrate.
Thank you so much, Dulcineia. Harf, and then Mbeke. Microphone, please, Harf.
Yes, thank you. Actually, I do believe that it is worth it in all aspects. Let's say rationally, spiritually, and practically. Because rationally, you know, we are gaining more knowledge, but this time on air, on something tangible. You know, we do read books, we do watch documentaries. So what if we do live this by ourselves? And spiritually, because we could enjoy this period of time, however it is, rather than complaining and feeling isolated or lonely during this time. And of course, practically, because we don't need to depend on or rely on some other people because I don't know where to go, how to use the train, and act as a child. I don't think, because some people do play this role. I don't know why. Maybe something psychologically inside them, because there's a refusal, actually. There's denial. And it's something just temporary. I don't want to feel it. I don't want to leave it. So in all these three angles, I believe it is worth it.
Thank you so much, Harf. Mbeke, and then Enolia, please.
Is it Dulcineia? Yeah. What Dulcineia said about eating out and speaking to people at tables is so beautiful. And, you know, I've had that experience in Ghana and I've had that experience in Jamaica, where people are very receptive. If you're on the minibus, you can become engaged in conversations that 10 people are involved in. And people want to hear your opinion. And suddenly you have a whole community of people and they hear your accent. Oh, you're from England. Oh, how long have you been here? And, you know, and it snowballs very quickly. The next thing, you could be invited to a meeting, a debate, a discussion. How long are you here for? Where are you staying? And so it's about balancing that. If you're on your own, it's about making sure you're safe and secure at all times. But investing the time and energy into meeting new people is always of value, I believe. And I believe that you don't know who knows who, and those connections can snowball very quickly, and they can turn into connections that bring employment. They can turn to connections that bring connections for other people that they can bring value to your life. They can add creativity to your thinking. They can open up your heart and your spirit. So yes, talking to strangers is something that I love doing because they become friends very quickly.
Thank you, Mbeke. Yes, Enolia?
So I'm sitting here thinking about it, and really what it boils down to is the mindset that you have when you're entering into a different country. If you want to have a beautiful experience, then you're going to put your heart out there, and you're going to open yourself up to the new experiences. You're going to engage the people. You're going to do it the best way that you know how, and that's all that you can do. We live in a world that constantly reminds us of the differences of each other. And really what you need to do is you need to find the similarities. And the similarities gives you a frequency in the plane by which you can engage. And that's all that counts. Because it's easy. It's easy to say, I'm staying to myself. I'm not going to put forward an effort. And, that's a different culture and I'm uncomfortable. And we want to stay in a little bubble, but the world is not a bubble. The world is engaging. The world is made up of many languages. It's made up of many different people, many different cultures. And we live in this world. Yeah. And so by all means, to me, it is absolutely worth it. And that's how you experience life.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Enolia. Before I give the floor to Mbeke, let me just add a little comment to what you said, because I think it's going to enrich in this conversation a little bit. This reminds me of a situation I've been experiencing with my children lately. I have a 21 and a 28-year-old children, and I am very talkative, as you can see. I am open to having these conversations with strangers wherever I go. And whenever I find or I meet somebody who has an accent, I always traditionally ask them, may I ask you where you come from? And I oftentimes find that there's a connection when they speak. I come from Colombia. Wow, that's like an icebreaker. Well, I've been chastised by my children. You don't ask that anymore. That's rude. That's insulting. That's not okay. Okay, I wanted to add that to the conversation because I'm sure you'll have opinions on that. Mbeke, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to what Enolia was saying, because as I speak to strangers, every time it confirms that we have much more in common as people than we have that's different. And, the more you do that, the more the connections grow, and the more you realize that so much of the superficial differences that we are forced to deal with actually are just barriers to us becoming the one nation that we actually are. So yeah, that's what I was thinking when you were speaking. So thank you for bringing that. And in answer to what you've just said, gosh, my brain is going so many different ideas. What was the last point you just made? Sorry, Jessica, it's come and it's gone.
That my children criticize me when I ask some people where they come from.
Yes, and I think that the generation that's growing up now are in a world where they've grown up with Black Lives Matter, they've grown up with EDI, they've grown up with all of these things that don't always speak to the similarities that we have. And so when someone says to me, oh, you speak really good English, and I say, and this has been said to me, and I say, I was born in England, and they say, oh, but you speak really good English, and I say, I was born in England. Okay, they're not hearing me. They have a perception of what I should sound like, and because I don't sound like that, they're already making some decisions about the value of what I bring to the world. And so that judgment might be what your children fear, if you ask that to somebody who takes that as an insult. So there are ways that you can ask that. And I often ask people, where are you from? Because I hear, you know, the Welsh accent, the Scottish accent, they'll tell me, and you know, it opens up great conversations. But when this gentleman said to me, you speak really good English, and said it 3 times and didn't hear me say I was born in England, I was like, okay, this is a different level of conversation. So it's about how we ask that, and the energy and the spirit, and also how the person hears it, and the opportunity to have the dialogue if it needs to be broken down.
Yeah, well, totally agree. Respect is one of those key values as well that we should always have up front. Liliana, go ahead, please.
Oh, I love that question because it's a topic of my research, and researching xenophobia and also racism from a perspective of someone that has a light skin. Always putting that on this way because I know I'm talking about from another place. So I've heard, and I always hear from many people that they get really offended if you ask at the beginning of the conversation, where do they come from? I don't have this problem, but this is my identity because I arrived here when I was 32, and I don't have it. I don't feel like a Swiss. I don't feel that I am Swiss. I don't have this connection with this identity. So for me, it's always a pleasure to explain that I come from Rio, that I come from Brazil, but it's not for everyone. And I learn not to ask quickly. And if I'm curious, I start talking about myself, like a migrant coming from a certain place. And it's not just the accent, as Mbeke said, sorry. Sometimes people, just because you don't look like an English, right, the way they think all English people should look like, they ask that. They are looking for to hear from an exotic history, or if you have accent. So people really get angry with this question, but it's not my case. I love
Thank you so much, Liliana, for explaining that to us. Anybody else? I have one question that I would like to ask all of you. Somebody mentioned we women. Harf, sorry. So the question is related to that. Integration as men, integration as women. Do you think there's a difference? Should we somehow tackle it differently? Should we help men and women integrate in different ways? What are your views on male and female integration? Mbeke,
I'm sorry.
It's the first one I see that I say, but you're all gonna speak. You're all gonna speak, so that's okay. Mbeke, go ahead, please.
Okay, so I think that there are very, very different roads to travel on this integration journey for men and women. I think there are also very different roads depending on your age. So I've traveled and lived in different countries as a younger woman. I've jumped on and off minibuses. I've gone up mountains. I've gone to live in strange places for 2 days and not even thought about it. And, you know, everything has always worked out well. I've had strangers say, come and stay at my house. And I've done that and it's been fine. And that's been as a single woman. Now, as an older woman, I feel much more cautious about those same things. And so when people who are in their 50s say to me, I'm thinking of going to live abroad, I say to them, do your research. Yeah, think about how you want to do it. If you're employed, you can live in what's called an expat community, where you get buses, you get bussed in and out, you know, everything is security guarded. But you can also live in those countries in a house by yourself, in the community. So you're surrounded by local people. And the first thing people always say to me is it safe? Yeah. And men never ask me, is it safe? They ask me, is it near to town? Is the transportation good? But the women ask, is it safe? And I think there is a reality that women's experiences and women's bodies are still abused. And so women feel the journey of relocation in a very different way to their male counterparts. Yeah, I'm going to stop there because I know everybody has their hands up and wants to say something, but yeah, that's what I will add to that.
Thank you so much, Mbeke, and then Liliana, and then Enolia.
I would like to add the experience I had while I was writing my book about binational marriages, because I really focus on Brazilian women married to foreign men. Then I interviewed like 50 women married to men from 19 different countries. So it's very interesting to see that when you go abroad because of a marriage, the aspects of integration are very deep, because you are not an expat that are going to a place and you stay 2-3 years. No, you are going to stay most probably for the rest of your life. And it's so different if you are a very well-educated person, and not in a positive way sometimes, because if you had a very good job in your country and you go abroad and you don't have the same acceptance when you go to Europe, for example, or to North America, because we are, and it's a lot of studies here in Switzerland confirming that people like Brazilian women, for example, are very stereotyped with many negative aspects. So if you have studied a lot, it's something. If you haven't studied, then it's another other dynamics. If you are older, if you are younger, if you have children, it depends on your husband as well. Some men, and I'm talking about Swiss men, they don't even allow the spouses to learn the language. So you have such a package, and it's really hard for a woman. And of course, it depends where she comes from. If she comes from Sweden and she has blue eyes, it's totally different from someone coming from the South America, you know. It's really, there are lots of dynamics that compound this complexity.
Thank you, Liliana. Enolia?
I just wanted to add that I would probably speak from experience, because like I've been to 40 different countries, and like half of them I went by myself. And really you have to do your homework on the culture and how the culture views women in order to truly engage and be safe and really know that you can traverse the country and work through the country. When I was coming up, I mean, the world has changed. So the world is more sensitized right now for fear, okay? And fearful of many, many different things. And it's really sad, because our young people now don't get a chance to really enjoy being young and enjoy being free, you know, and enjoy engaging without, you know, being tracked and track my phone, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But the opportunity there is that you can move around, but you have to do your homework. And then as a woman, it's different than as a man, and you have to take precautions. You know, you have to be able to just know how to function. So I grew up in New York City, so there's certain things I do in certain countries. If I'm by myself in a certain country, I leave a note where I'm going to actually traverse and look and sightsee and everything else, because if anything happens to me, nobody would know what happened to me, right? But there's common sense things that you can do to just make sure that even when you're not engaged, you're engaged, you know? So here's where I'm trained. I leave it in my room. Anything happened to me, well, at least they know where I was going to travel to and where I was going to sightsee to and where my path was going to be, you know? But a man wouldn't necessarily have to do that. They should do it. It doesn't mean that they necessarily feel that they have to, though. There's more of a sense of safety there because they're a man. But people disappear, man, woman, doesn't matter. You know, so to me, common sense of being safety. And if I'm a woman traveling alone, I'm not going to come in after dark. I'm going to come in before dark. I don't know what the country's engagement is after dark. You know, we do our homework And then we use practical common sense as we traverse the world.
Thank you so much, Enolia. Mbeke, please.
I just wanted to add that, unfortunately, and Liliana has spoken to this as well, but unfortunately, racism and colorism operates widely around the world. And, you know, my experience as a light-skinned woman as well is that my experience has been very different to my dark-skinned sisters. And also my experience when I wrap my head a lot. So I use African cloth a lot. I spend a lot of time in Ghana. And when I lived in Malaysia, every time I went out with my head wrap, I was stopped by the police. Yeah? And I asked them why they stopped me. And when they would hear my English accent, they'd say, "Oh, you can go." And I said, "No, you stopped me. I'm surrounded by 4 policemen. It's an intimidating experience. Why have you stopped me?" And then eventually one of them said to me, "We thought you were a prostitute." Because we have women here who look like you, and with this wrap, you look like a prostitute. And I was like, that's such a horrible experience to have. And so I have to now navigate that space in a different way, because what I would naturally do, which is to cover my head when I feel like wrapping my head, I have, you know, dresses and cloth that's been made in Ghana, and I often wear them when I'm out. And then, but I don't want to have that experience of being stopped by the police in any country. So it is I think it's very different if you're a woman on your own, navigating these spaces.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mbeke. Harf, you're the only man. You're going to have to speak about this.
Yeah, I have it because you started your question by we women. So
no, of course. We want to hear what you have to say for sure.
Thank you for inviting me. Yeah, of course. You know, when I worked twice actually on a research called country profile. I've done that about 2 countries, and in this regard, we address many actually topics and many points and bullets. One of them is about women. Is there anything to consider in terms of dressing, being alone, maybe some certain places or certain timings, maybe mainly at night, and sometimes even the body language, like shaking hands or not, or kissing on cheeks or while greetings, something like this. So there's nothing related only to men in those let's say modules we are talking about, but we talk about women separately, which resonates actually, which shows something. I think mainly the focus is the first impression actually is about safety and about objectifying women, but still there are further actually topics which are now covered here in Europe, not even in other countries, because they didn't reach that yet, which is the equality in terms of having the same salaries in a profession, in the career, and even the opportunity of promotion. This is not my area, but I know that those are the main points. I'm just afraid of the other extreme part, because sometimes we feel men as victims, because we are the victims and we are offended somehow as we are let's say the opponent, and we are not actually. So this is the extreme that I dislike actually, but it is not the majority, so I'm not really worried.
Thank you so much, Harf. Some people call me a third culture kid because I was born in the US, but I moved to Spain when I was 4. I grew up in Spain. My first language was English, but then I had to learn Spanish and I forgot my English and I had to relearn English. And my kids are a little bit like that too. My daughter Karina was born in Kazakhstan, and we adopted her when she was 2.5 years old. And we were then living in Poland. After that, we moved to Spain. Then we moved to Russia, then to Switzerland, then to Panama, back to Switzerland, now in Spain. My daughter doesn't have one culture. She is a full third culture kid. So is my son, but he lived for longer in Spain where he was born. As we move to another country and we have children, our integration is something we can work on as adults. But children also have their own issues when integrating in their new country or countries. In the case of my kids, they had to adapt to many different countries and they have no choice. We don't give them a choice. We just take them there. So I also wanted to mention children in today's Congress because I think it's important to mention that as parents, we need to make efforts to help our kids integrate. And I wanted your opinions on or your comments on this because a lot of people, I'm sorry to say, I've seen this over and over again, just go to different countries, they put the kid in the international school and they forget about the kid's integration in the local culture. And that's it. And those kids sometimes suffer a lot. So I wanted to put it on the table here to discuss it too, just in case you had something to say, because I think it's an important topic as well. Mbeke?
I'll speak to this having worked in the education system for a long time. And I used to speak about and at a conference that I spoke at, a lady came to me afterwards and said, I'm thinking about relocating and I'm quite nervous about going with my children. So I asked her, how old are the children? She said they were 2 and 3 years old. And I said to her, you know, at that age, all children want to know is that they're around their parents. I worked in a school where there was a child there who was 13, and children at 13 have territory. Wherever they are in the world, they have territory, they have friends. And when parents say, I've been offered this job at the other side of the world, let's go, and they pick up their teenage children, they often have a really hard time because their children refuse to settle. Yeah, the children literally take a point. They say, I don't want to be here. I want to be back with my friends, wherever that is. And young children, 3, 4, 5, 6, particularly primary school children, they tend to integrate very quickly. They get into the banter, the language, the clothes, the food, and enjoy the space. And so when people are asking me about relocation, I often say to them, how old are your children? Because it will make the difference between whether you decide to stay or decide to leave. And nobody wants to see their children unhappy. Teenagers, you know, teenagers are also already going through puberty, they have hormonal swings, etc., etc. They want to be around the people that they know. They want to be around the familiar. They're not interested in whether it's sunny all day or whether their friends have pools. They're not interested in trying new food. And this is a general statement. I'm speaking to my experience. There are always exceptions to the rule, but in the line of development of bodies and hormones and changes, younger children tend to adapt more easily than older children do. And so I think it's just something that parents who are listening to this can consider very seriously. Because as you said, Jessica, often as adults, we make decisions and we don't think about how our children are going to manage those new spaces. We just take them along as if they're baggage almost. I'm going, so you have to come as well. And often, you know, if the children are raised in a particular way, they won't voice their discontent. They won't voice any issues that they have. But when they get to the new place, their bodies and their minds will not want to be there, and they'll let you know that as a parent.
Thank you so much, Mbeke. Yes, Enolia?
So I would have to agree with Mbeke completely in terms of the age and the differences. And the other thing that I found, like even with my own children, I have 2 boys, they started traveling since they were like 8 months old. I mean, we would pack and we would go and we would travel. So the thing about it is that as they became middle school kids, they would go on in programs like people to people student ambassadors, and they started traveling by themselves, and they started traveling to different countries by themselves. And to this day, as adults, they can't imagine staying. I have my youngest son, who's 28 years old, now lives in Australia, while the oldest one, he just travels all over the world. They just finished coming back from Thailand. So the thing about it is that another piece of this is that if you're going to relocate, and travel with your kids so that they're not just in one place all the time, the whole time. And then all of a sudden it's just like, okay, I'm uprooting you everywhere. But that engagement of traveling while they were young actually has an impact, can have a positive impact, and especially if you're traveling as a family, to expand their world to new cultures and new experiences, and that they can come back as a family and integrate, and you can come back as a family and integrate them in. And it makes a difference in their education too, because then when they're being taught certain subjects, I remember my sixth grade, my son was in sixth grade, and he had just came back from the south of France with the student ambassadors program, and they went over the Holocaust, and he got up and talked about having been in the Holocaust Museum and how important this was that they were trying to say and how he felt. And so those experiences integrated in of having seen the world and really understanding what history meant, you know, brings a different picture. So I think that if you're going to, if you know that your husband or if a family has to relocate at a later stage, that it's important to have done the traveling so that it's just not completely shock in terms of uprooting and then landing in that new place.
Thank you, Enolia. Yes, Harf?
A couple of years ago, a worker came to my house to fix something, and he heard me calling my son. So he told me, "It seems that you are not purely Dutch." I told him, "Yes, I'm not." Then he said, "There's something in my chest I would like to express about himself." I told him, "Just go ahead." He said, "You know, I'm originally Turkish. Here in the Netherlands, I don't feel Dutch. But the problem is when I travel to Turkey for a vacation, I don't feel Turkish." I told him, "Because you are not Turkish in Turkey and nor Dutch in the Netherlands. You are Turkish in the Netherlands. You just want to understand who you are and accept it and even feel it. It's not only about acceptance. It's not that disease to accept it, you know, or to cope with." And this is the case actually for many people. They keep struggling for something which will never happen. So that's why many people, when they introduce themselves, they use two nationalities at once, like Brazilian, Swiss, you know, because they feel both, or actually they don't feel exactly 50-50%, but they represent both somehow, or in my case, Syrian Dutch. I think that could be one of the solutions to solve this identity conflict.
And it's funny, Harf, because, for example, when I became Spanish, I have dual citizenship, American and Spanish. I remember the Americans telling me, okay, from now on, whenever you're in American soil, you're only American. Whenever you're in Spanish soil, you're only Spanish. In the rest of the world, you get to choose what you are. This is what I was told, which is similar to what you're saying. So even legally speaking, there is that differentiation. I want to go back to the topic of children because there's one aspect that we didn't mention, and maybe, I don't know, Dulcineia, if you have children or not, but I know Liliana could give us some answers about this. We've been talking about children of expats moving from country to country. But what about the kids of migrants or refugees who are either born in the second country or they go to the second country very young, and that's the only country they actually know? And they become more, I suppose in your case, Liliana, more Swiss than anything else. How do you balance this? What is the process in that case so that your children also keep their own original background as an important part of themselves? I think that's also important.
Yeah, so my children, they were born here in Switzerland. My husband is not Swiss, he's German. Although I live in the German part of Switzerland, it's not Germany. So we have these three cultures at home. I will talk about my children quickly, and I don't want to go to this topic of children because it's not my topic. I don't understand a lot about this. So my children were born here, both of them. My daughter she will turn 18 in September. My son will turn now 14 in April. What do I do? to keep my culture, because I am the only one who speaks Portuguese. So with this background, I speak Portuguese all the time at home. As I met my husband in Rio, he also learned Portuguese, so we speak Portuguese during dinner and lunch. They speak Swiss German, which is their dialect, with the father. The father answers in his dialect, which is called Alemannish, and I keep on speaking Portuguese. So it's not very good for my German, but I always had in mind, for me, my priority was that my children learn my language because I wanted them to be connected with my family in Brazil. So, but what I wanted to add is my daughter she's very aware of these three worlds that she belongs to. And she says, Mama, I am not a Swiss, although I speak the dialect without any accent or any foreign accent. I don't have the same subjects. I don't eat the same things. I speak louder and I interrupt people, things that they don't do here. And I don't even, we do different types of vacations. So my life is so different, she says, that I sometimes don't belong to, although I was born here. So she's very, very aware that she's not the same as her friends.
Thank you so much for that testimonial, Liliana. That was really interesting. Mbeke, please.
I love what Liliana had to say. And I just want to pick up on what Harv was saying. You know, I was born in the UK. My parents were from Jamaica. And so my parents were very determined that we would be Jamaicans. And what that meant was that everything that we ate, all the food cooked in my house, came from the Caribbean or from West Africa. And then I would go to school and the children at school would say, I'm going home to have tea. Now, in our house, tea was what you drank. For white British people, tea was the name that they called dinner, and it might be something small like a sandwich and a glass of squash. We didn't eat like that. And so it's a constant navigation of both worlds for the children. So I know that at home, if we had soup, the soup would contain yam, it would contain sweet potato, it would contain something called dashin or cocoa yam. That's what my mother was raised on. When my friends at school had soup, it was from a can often, and it might be made by a company called Heinz. And so you're navigating these worlds, you're navigating them with your teachers and the children. You know, as a child, for a long time, I said, I'm Jamaican. But as Harf said, when I went to Jamaica, they said, no, you're British. And then people in England said, but you're Jamaican. If your parents are from Jamaica, you're Jamaican. And so you are navigating all of these different cultures all the time. And, you know, back to our earlier discussions, if I'm in a country where I don't know anyone, I may well find a Jamaican restaurant as a way of grounding myself in that space and then branching out because that's familiar. But yeah, as a young child, you are navigating all those different spaces. And, you know, Liliana, I would love to be at your dinner table. That's what
Yes.
I would love to be at your dinner table.
See, that reminds me of an anecdote, something that used to happen to me as a young teenager in Spain. I had three friends. They were all locals. They had been born and raised in the same city. The city of Pamplona, where crazy people run in front of bulls every year. So some of you might know it. And I was just one of them. But it was not once, but several times that I heard their parents say, no, but Jessica is different. She's American. For example, with reference to being allowed to return home later. You know, they had this very strict curfew. And my parents were not so strict. So they always explained it as, oh, but Jessica's American. Even though I had been living there my whole life and I had gone to school with them, and my mom was from Pamplona, born in Pamplona, but to their minds, I was exotic. I was different. And that always has an impact in your life. As Liliana was saying, even if there's no conscious intention, that happens. It is part of who you are, and you can't just take it away, I suppose. Okay, we only have a few minutes left, and we have been greeted by people from our audience. I want to say thank you for being here. Remember, you just have a few more minutes if you want to ask any other questions. But because we only have a few minutes, I would like to ask our panelists if they have one last piece of advice, one last recommendation they would like to share with those who are watching us now or who will watch it later on how to better integrate themselves, how to make that process easier, how to help themselves so that they can thrive in that process of integration, because it is not an easy process. I think we all agree. Anything you'd like to share? Yes, go ahead, Dulcineia.
So I want to take a little bit of what Enola said, and also you said, Jessica, about that woman that was not ready to move again and learn languages again and blah, blah, blah. And I think that because I work with the MBTI and we see these psychological types, there are two types of people, introverts and extroverts. And this makes such a difference in your integration because it's very hard. I'm an introvert. It's very hard for an introvert to go out there and to mingle and to say, okay, let me join this group and things like this. So it's what Enola said, go on your pace and do what's possible for you. So if it's only possible for you to speak with one person, speak with one person at the time. You don't need to do a big thing. Just, speak with the person next to you on the bus, on the restaurant, or whatever. That's the way people are. I know we live in a world that's getting harder and harder to live in, but people are always very happy to help. Most people are. And when you say, oh, I need help, oh, I'm new here, I want to meet people, I want to integrate, what can you offer? And so people will always help. And that's my advice for introverts like me.
Thank you so much, Dulcineia, for that perspective. Very useful. Anybody else would like to add something?
Yeah,
Yes,
I
Harf,
would like
go
to.
ahead. Sure.
Yes, I understand that some people maybe, as a just said, are introverts, or maybe some other people would like to stay at home to be peaceful. That's fine, of course. These are choices. But for those who are willing to contribute in the new country or new home they moved to, I would like to tell them that there is a reality you have to understand. You are somehow swimming against the stream. So you need extra effort and time to reach what other people could reach who are locally based and belong to this country. This is not to disappoint people, but to make it really realistic. It is achievable. It is possible, of course, but we need a lot of time. We need to be really patient. Otherwise, if we keep complaining, we will just play the role of victim and do nothing. So you could do it, just look forward, and you need the time. Just put that in front of you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Harf. Anybody else would like to add something? If I may, I would like to add something. Okay, Enolia, go ahead, please.
So you know what? To integrate is always going to be a challenge. Whether it's the language, whether it's the relationship, whether it's the culture, no matter what. But I think that I would remind anyone who is facing these integration challenges is that remember that you always have a choice. You always have a choice as to how you approach it. You always have a choice on how rapid it takes place or how slow it needs to take place. You always have a choice of whether you choose to do it alone or with a group or one-on-one. You always have a choice. And if you can remember that you can go at your own rhythm, go at your own pace, trust yourself, and that you always have a choice, it will take place, and it will take place at the right time for you, at the pace that you need, and at the intention that you have. So I would leave people with that.
Thank you, Enolia. I wanted to say that in my experience as a humanologist, I worked with many, many refugees, migrants, expats in many countries from many different backgrounds. And I had to help a lot of people who ended up having depressions because they felt outcasts, they felt uncomfortable. Some migrants and refugees didn't want to be there at all, but they had no choice, and depression ensued. I think it's really important for anybody in a situation like that to do two things. The first one is try and stop the negative self-talk. You are where you are, you have to accept that you are there, and you have to try and make the best of it. But the second advice that I have is ask for help, like Dulcineia said. If you are in a situation in which you don't want to be, but you have to, ask for help. There's people like me that work with people like you and try and help you overcome the depression, the discomfort, the sadness, the guilt, the pain, whatever negative emotions you're having. Because this process of integration can be a volunteer process of integration, but it can also be an imposed one. And that is even harder. So if you need help, ask for it. There's a lot of experts out there who can help you navigate those very difficult waters. And I wanted to just mention this before we finish. Well, it's been an amazing panel. I have to thank all our panelists tonight for the effort they made to be here, the wisdom they shared, the ideas they shared, the knowledge. I know that everybody who is watching or who will watch this panel in this Congress today, the first International Congress, More Human, Rehumanizing Humanity, will learn a lot, will leave with a lot of food for thought, a lot of insights, and a lot of inspiration. I want to thank you all for your contributions. I am really, really grateful on behalf of the International Institute of Humanology. Thanks a lot. Your testimonials, your knowledge, your information are all very, very helpful. And to those of you who are watching us right now or who will watch this later, remember that the Congress goes on, that we will have another panel tomorrow with 5 new international experts. And the topic tomorrow is going to be healthy and inspiring relationships. Another very deep, important, and interesting human topic. I am Jessica Lockhart. This is the International Institute of Humanology. Thank you very much, everybody, for being here. See you tomorrow. Have a nice evening.